Hi, my name is Yanni Ramos, and the country I'll be going over is Cuba. A number of international organizations have looted Cuba's disaster preparedness. For instance, Oxfam Red Cross United Nations. The occurrence of the known storm Hurricane Matthew caused 40 deaths in the United States and 1,000 deaths in Haiti. However, it is not responsible for any deaths in adjacent Cuban nation. Several reasons can justify the low rates of mortality resulting from the Cuban hurricanes that have been hit in that country. Perhaps education is a major factor pointed out. Disaster response, prevention, and preparedness are the elements in the Cuban education curriculum in general. People in workplaces, universities, and schools are constantly taking part in training and educational sessions to deal with natural disasters. The system teaches all Cubans from an early age how to conduct themselves during an attack of a hurricane. More, however, radio and television play a substantial part in educating the public with when a hurricane is arising. 48 hours before the forecast of a hurricane hit the island, there is often mobilization of all institutions to implement measures like massive education and the emergency plan. The implementation pattern in Cuba. In Cuba, it is referred to a top-down implementation pattern. Cuba has an outstanding record when it comes to response and preparedness to disasters, which involve evacuations and warning. The top-down approach implementation in Cuba is a precise and clear system of control and command, which concerns people from the government to disaster management project. Disasters are prone in Cuba: tsunami, earthquakes, and hurricanes. There has been 5 tsunamis and 14 earthquakes in the country between the years 1678 and 1992. The 1766 earthquake that transpired in Santiago de Cuba was the most destructive event on record. It injured 700 people and killed 48 others. Landslides are a big factor in Cuba. The region in Cuba with the highest threat to landslides are those on the eastern side of the land. Surprisingly, these provinces in the country also experience the greatest vulnerability and risk of earthquakes occurrence mentioned before. Hurricanes are probably one of the more common disasters in Cuba. More hurricane events which happened after the year 1948 has also left a number of people dead, including Agnes, Alma, Hilda, and Michael, which average killed about 6 people per hurricane. The severity and number of hurricanes that make touchdown in Cuba have amplified over the past 150 years. In keeping with the estimations, Cuba is experienced to get 8 to 9 more hurricanes per season, with 2 or 3 of these being a Category 3 or higher. Participants in Cuban's disaster management. The system of risk management is uneven in Cuba, and the key participants involved in the Department of Public Health and military. With regard to public health, the system is unquestionably progressive and has its significant programs. The effectiveness of disaster response preparedness system of the civil defense for hurricanes is due big part through the knowledge of region of local government agencies, mass organizations, and mass media, as well as is due to the capacity to the use of outstanding several services of the Meteorology Institution of Cuba. Some obstacles that are effective disaster management. Cubans are more educated and prepared for disasters with science research to back up their findings. The good news is that there's a strong, well-developed administrative structure today alongside a technical workforce which would be necessary for the transformation of a risk landscape of Cuba. Nevertheless, it seems that some Cuban practices in disaster management are also making the country's population more and more vulnerable and weakening their reliance. There are many current well-depreciated programs in mitigation are reducing complex risks. For instance, disaster and environmental pollution. These consequences therefore have been failure of the society to create and people in danger of natural disasters. There are greater reasons for steady development of provision and emergency management all over the globe. The routine responsibility of functioning of military institutions are more often than not inadequately to what is necessary in solving the requirements and demands generated by disasters. How disaster management has shaped the policy in Cuba. The country, however, has a pitiable record in the field of disaster management, recovery, and reconstruction. The strength of the Cuban system has shaped disaster management planning and policy in the country, but there has been significant weaknesses as well which people should be aware of. The new policy as well include improvement in population's health via campaign like mass vaccinations, the activities, institution, and education, and the structuring of mass mitigation.